Hey, good afternoon. So under the camera you see on watercolor paper, Fling Bling, the title of this assignment, represented by what you might find on a forest floor in the fall or the autumn. Now, maybe not so much around here in Okinawa where you don't have a lot of trees dropping their leaves, but certainly in colder climates if you've ever lived in a colder place, okay? Now, I guess we can expand this so it's not just the floor of the forest with layers of leaves and berries and twigs and lizards and snakes and things like that, but I guess you could also make it any shallow space with layering that you might look down on and find at your feet. You think of the possibilities there, but right now we're sticking to the idea of a forest. You're walking through a forest, you look down, you see your feet, and you see a layer of leaves and other items that you might spot in a forest. Now, you're going to be limited on the amount of colors. You'll have the white of the paper, watercolor paper. You'll have some metallics, 3 different types, 2 types of silver, 1 type of gold, which you can blend, and also your black permanent markers. So you're going to be restricted or limited in the tools and the materials that you get to use, all right? Furthermore, there is not a concept drawing for this. It is its own 50-point assignment. However, if you would like to make a little extra bonus point, or 2 or 3, then along with this final large scale here, full sheet of paper, you can, on a quarter sheet, do a smaller leaf for some other item by way of a color study. Color studies are usually small, and they're done using color and other tools in order to explore the possibilities of color, also to explore technique, right? If you're not accustomed to using brushes all that often. So here I have a color study, which I would encourage you to do in combination with a full-sized final, and both of these are done on watercolor paper. Okay, did I say watercolor paper now 4 times? I sure did. Now, in doing a color study, you might start with pencil lightly, and you see that with my pencil, I'm drawing very light lines. And I don't have to make any of my lines or shapes realistic. Here is my marker. Now, it has a fat chisel tip right there, and on the other end, it has more of a pointed tip. Now, I want you to use this fat end extensively, not exclusively, but extensively. And here I am extending that fat mark into the whole of my paper. It's extending, it's going out into a lot of different parts. If I take the chisel tip and use its broadest edge, that one right there, I get a big old broad mark, which I can broaden out even more just by doubling it up. So that's a very bold line that you can see from far, far away. But I can also turn the chisel tip and get something skinnier. So the chisel tip, that angle tip, depending on how it's held in contact with the paper, will give you something very fat, somewhat thin like that, or medium. So there is that advantage of a chisel tip. Now, as long as you've got the good form of the tip there, you're in great shape. If you beat that up, bash it against the paper, don't take care of the marker, you're out of luck. Okay, you don't have the nice tip to work with. So here I go with the broader end of the chisel tip, and you can see that black and white pattern is very, very strong. And the line itself is very strong. Now I'm going to come in here and do some painting. That is a permanent marker. Water will not affect it in the least. Let me show you the setup for my palette. I have a darker silver metallic, a lighter silver metallic, even a white metallic if you want to call it that, and then just a regular gold metallic. These are tempera paints, so they will thin with water and they will wash out with water. And just as I set up for watercolor painting with my towel, my brush, and my water, I also have to set up for my painting using tempera paint. Okay, you can see it here under the camera. Let me get things a little positioned, a little farther to the left there so you can see them. Now, what I'm going to do, remember, you always have to maintain a point in that brush, okay? So if that brush does not point, you do not use it. I can dip the point into the tempera and just draw it out there, just drag it out. Okay, you never push a brush, you always pull a brush. And since I'm using that lighter silver, I'll go ahead and put some here. Now I'm painting with fairly thick color. If I make a mistake, I think I can correct that later on. You may not see under the camera that I'm laying down this very, very light silver, but I'm doing that, and I'll just go ahead and leave that alone. I can hit that again later once it dries, try to even it out, make it a little bit more uniform. The color means will be uniform if it's all the same, and sometimes that first coat does not do the trick. Okay, again, if you make a boo-boo, there's a very good chance that later on you can correct it with a marker. I also correct it with my finger, just like I did right now, pushing it out of the way. Washing the brush, I'm ready for some gold. So you can see that this is not a difficult assignment. This brush I have in my hand might be a little on the big side. Remember, you can always turn your paper so that, since I'm right-handed, I can come in from a right angle or a right edge. That would be me coming in from the side here, and lay that color down. Here, let's paint on top of that existing silver right there. Let's see what happens. A little bit of blending is going to go on. I don't know if that's good or bad, but by way of experimentation, if I'm careful, it is a-okay. Take some gold over here. Now, you don't have to paint every single part of your design. I would use a lot of the black and white pattern as is. I don't think I would be painting it. Oops, you can see that that is a little tricky because of the hard edges. Notice how I turn the paper. This is tempera paint. It's water-based. It'll dry quickly. Try not to drag your hand through the paint while it's drying. You can see I kept my pinky out there to kind of stabilize the brush while I'm working, and I do a lot of manipulation of the surface. If one surface is a little dry and I can afford to go back and give it another coat so it's a little more even and bright, I will do that. Do not worry if you make a mistake, okay? We can always correct that. All right, so you can see the direction I'm going. That has yet to dry. This one is already dry. You can see that if I wanted to, I continue to add to that. I don't like that line I made, so I'm going to wipe some of that up. Drag, drag. I'm going to drag every other one. Maybe I want this gold to show up a little better. It's dried. I'm going to go over it again with a second coat. There's that second coat. That's making it look a little bit brighter and more uniform. Those lines underneath the gold paint, when the second coat of gold paint dries, I will go back over those lines, perhaps with Sharpie marker, or maybe not. While we're thinking about it, while I'm talking about it, let's just go ahead and rinse my brush, put it down there on the towel. Let me take this permanent marker here, and maybe that skinny edge. This is dry silver paint, okay? It is not wet, so it's safe to draw on top of it. You can see that I can pretty easily, with this nice newer marker from 100 Yen store, draw my details right on top of the dry silver paint, and it is a-okay. Let me go over here. Now, all of these colors are pretty dry too. You can see I can correct a mistake there. I can reinforce a line there. So don't worry if your painting gets a little bit out of hand. It's always the case that when the paint dries, if we need to, we can do a little touching up. Not a lot, just a little bit, to clean things up and look like you had greater control over not just your paints, but your drawing tool as well. That would be your marker in your hand, okay? Now, you try.